think things are gonna get any better until America starts contending with the Republicans and what they really are, and stop dealing with them like they're a legitimate party in opposition. Because
Yep.
what you have is a bunch of legitimized like fascists working against everything that is supposed to be united government or anything. You see that. You see what the foolishness that Marjorie Taylor Greene is tweeting and stuff.
Right.
Oh, separate places like that. They're like, what points do we contend with what is really happening? Like, this is a country, like, it's not like war and civil war are things that this country doesn't know. It shouldn't be so, like, you know, out of the realm of possibility. But let's look at what we're really dealing with. What we're really dealing with is a party of fascists that actively want no parts of any level of equality. They only see who they care about as one tiny aspect of the population and fuck everybody else. They are on a concerted effort. They're putting their money and all of their power behind doing everything that they can to strip groups and entire people full of rights. I think the problem is we keep talking about them like they are just somebody, like they're just a regular opponent, as opposed to a literal fucking like enemy of unity, son. That's what they are. Like, that's what they are at this point. Like, and they be saying as much in plain sight. They literally be like, fuck your election, fuck how it's supposed to go. No, fuck a peaceful transfer party.
Mhm.
And because they do things in such silly, stupid, fucking goofy, and they intentionally do it that way. They have these big stupid characters. They do things that, you know, are easy to mock and stuff like that, because then it's easy to dismiss it and downplay it. But let's not we forget, these are motherfuckers who stormed the Capitol. These are people who fucking have packed your fucking Supreme Court and are out there stripping your fucking rights. These are people who are banning your fucking books all over the country. These are literally textbook fascists. Like, I don't know what else they got to do for us to realize we're in the book 1984. I think that's what needs to happen. We got to stop. They're wicked. They're not just regular politicians. It's not a difference in ideology. Like, they are against. They are literally, they consider everybody else an enemy, and they make it very much so clear. They don't even try to pretend. So,
not to mention like the gerrymandering. Like they're the ones that are rigging elections to win elections.
Yes.
Like, this is like that alone, and that's been going on for years. That alone should have been the giveaway, like the start, at least the starting point for us all to acknowledge that this is the anti-democratic party. Like, they are anti-democracy.
Yes.
And you can't have people like that and not and treat them as, you know, as you said, just like the opposition party. They're not the opposition party. They are anti-democracy, and this is how they keep winning.
If they were in another country, if we were analyzing another country and there was a party operating like this, we would be talking about them like a rogue, like the government has already dissolved from what it's supposed to be. They are no longer and they stopped a while back. That's the crazy thing. They stopped operating within any level of like feigned civility, rules, hiding it or anything. It's just out in the fucking open now. The shit that they're doing is absurd, and we see it just plain as day. And
well, here's a question for y'all. No right or wrong answers here. Where do you think we're actually going? Because, you know, you look at history, right? And I'm not the first person to make this comparison, but you guys already know where I'm going. Where are we actually going? What do you guys actually see happening based on what you guys look at, what you guys cover? Where do you actually see this ending?
I see a potential second civil war of the United States to be a disaster of such momentous proportions for not only the people who live in the United States, but the world writ large. So much so that our own security apparatus in Canada has it as a primary concern that they're worried about, as do other countries. I can't speak for Mexico, but it's definitely something that the rest of the world does not want to see. I don't think people realize that the people who are heavily armed in the United States happen to be far-right militias, the ones who happen to have training with ex-police and ex-military, far-right militias. The amount of cops in the United States that would line up with far-right militias would be devastating. You would have a situation in which the federal army would have to be attacking. Like, it would be a fucked up disaster. It needs to be avoided at all costs. It's not something that, like, when pundits are like, Tim Pool has been begging for a civil war his whole life. I don't know if he thinks he'll become a superhero, but it's like, it would be no joke. It would be no laughing matter. It would be unbelievable amounts of death and carnage and destabilization and of a very populous country, you know.
And yet you recognize that it seems very much so on the playboard, don't you?
Oh yeah, of course. Oh yeah.
At the same time, it's like not to say like I'm calling for it, but it seems like a big event is almost necessary for there to be any shift at all. Because how else are things going to turn around if there isn't some kind of, you know, crescendo like that, where there's this coming together, like something massive has to change or happen for there to be some actual changes.
Well, and part of the reason why I feel so frustrated is because I agree with that. Like, I think that something big has to happen or will happen, like a civil war or democracy completely collapsing. But, like, there are avenues out. And I felt like any chance that we had to take the off-ramp and avoid that, we avoided it, right? And so, like, one was getting somebody like Bernie Sanders in office who would kind of do like a similar thing to FDR potentially. I'm not like, I don't know if Bernie would be successful in that regard, but like trying to save capitalism from itself by doing policies that benefit people. Because I think that a lot of the problems stem from people being so desperate and distraught that they're looking for answers. And when you're looking for answers, you are more susceptible to radicalization, a demagogue coming along. And so it's easy to accept more scapegoats. It's trans people, it's immigrants. But if you were to change the situation economically speaking, I think that would help. Like, it's not going to get rid of racism and transphobia. That's not what I want to say. But like, if Democrats were to make an effort to reshape the country and like change, basically have like a political realignment, so that way politics isn't so hyper-capitalistic and commodified, I think that could have an effect. But at the same time, like, even if somebody came along like that wasn't Bernie, and maybe too late, because I feel like we're kind of like past the Rubicon in a sense.
Democrats cannot reshape the country to a vision that they don't believe in. Democrats are not as fundamental removed from the other side, and that's the important thing we need to recognize, right? We're looking at they're making Cop City right now in Atlanta. Let's keep it real, right? I live in New York City. This is a place that full Democratic stronghold, and all the Rikers, all the things that we deal with. That's what's happening. That's what's happening here. I don't think we're going to see that from them, because they're a part of it. I don't think complicit. It's because what it really is I don't think it's, you know, that people are being tricked into something. Yes, there's some level of that in the world, but let's keep it real. The team with the home court advantage is who's up. The reason why they have so much more money, they have so much more power, is because they always fucking had it. All they are doing, that's what I keep saying every week, everything that they're doing is not new. They are just reframing, rebranding, restructuring the same old arguments. The reason why, you know, they're so successful at it, they have the stronghold, is because this has been what the country was built on. It's not the country. The country didn't have some like ugly shift and turn from what its ideals are. The country is just it's just carrying out what the country's been doing. And the reality is, the Democrats and the Republicans, look at who are actually in power, and not just everybody who has to in the nation, the billions of people who live in a country, and then they have to choose between in this two-party system. So, you know, you think of a whole lot, but no, look at who's actually in power in this country, and what they want, and what they believe in, and who has power, and what groups have power. Do you think they are fundamentally unaligned with what it looks like in this world, in this country? Brother, no.
Yeah.
I think, it's going as it's always been going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're headed in one direction, and it doesn't like look very good. And yeah, I think that's perfectly put. Democrats, they've had the opportunity. They are capitalists. That's the thing. It's like both parties are neoliberal. Both parties, at the end of the day, they serve corporate America, and our system has been transformed to be even more commodified than it was at the start. I mean, even elections are now commodified ventures. And this isn't necessarily a new phenomenon. People look to Citizens United, but back in the 70s with Buckley v. Vallejo, that's when our elections started to get commodified. So, like, there was a 2014 Princeton University study that I always reference where they looked at policy outcomes, and whatever the elites and special interests want, that becomes law. But average Americans have a statistically non-significant impact on policy outcomes, because we're not who the politicians, you know, are there to serve. We may elect them, we may vote, so we're democratic in that sense, but ultimately, when it comes to governance, we're an afterthought, if even. Like, saying we're an afterthought would be polite. Like, the government doesn't, you know, both parties are terrible. Like, one party's better than the other. Like, I'll never say that they're, like, equal. But, you know, ultimately, Democrats, they refuse to do what is necessary to fundamentally reshape the country. So that's what, like, in a way, that's how you see fascism arise. That's how you see authoritarianism arise. It's not, and like, just to kind of move away from America, it's not just an American phenomenon where, like, you see weak liberals enabling fascism. If you look to Turkey, the weak liberals enabled Erdogan's rise, didn't, compete enough. Pre-Bolsonaro, the Liberal Party without Lula was very, very weak.
Right now, it's led by a far-right authoritarian regime, one that is like openly asking for the execution of homosexuals and things like that. And you're like, this is pretty intense, but we're not criticizing it in the same way we do a lot of other countries that are doing, pretty much apartheid states.
Like the fascist movement is international now. That's the thing. And it was always going to be the product of global capitalism, because ultimately, if you take all the resources and you just concentrate it towards the top, and people get desperate and they starve, and that just creates social unrest. So that, in addition to all the underlying factors and the systemic factors and the issues that were there from the founding of our country and other countries, it all just compounds, and eventually the dam bursts. And we're kind of to that moment where we're waiting to see the dam burst. What is that going to look like? Nobody really knows. But I see some lefties talk about how, oh, well, nothing's going to happen. We need a revolution. It's see, the problem with that is, do you think we're closer to a socialist revolution or a fascist authoritarian revolution? I think we're closer to the latter. So that scares me. So it's I don't know what the answer is. I think that the one source of hopium is worker rights and unionization. I think that really is a force for good. But ultimately,
and also
it feels
hopeless. And also revolution. George Jackson talks about this a lot in his books, and so does Huey Newton. Revolution isn't necessarily people talk about revolution as a spontaneous outburst that is just disorganized and chaos in its way. You're gonna good faith and bless your way into a revolution, right? But a revolution would have to be something that would be organized, and it would be organized by revolutionaries. At the end of the day, you have to have an honest conversation about what your role is in a movement and what you are able and capable to do. And if you're not that, shut the fuck up. Reality is, the rest of the average person is not a fucking revolutionary. Yeah. If you're tweeting about it, if you're tweeting about how we need a revolution, chances are you're not the person that is ready to give your life or go become a political prisoner and go start a revolution. Yeah, there are people that do that.
The militia, no. Exactly. No, you're tweeting from your California parents' basement and with the communist symbol.
Yeah. Exactly. You are a person that is not a part trying to do any revolution, and you are commenting to other people like us who are also not revolutionaries. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there are people go make a decision, figure out who you are. I honestly, I always say, I don't appreciate when people give me don't give me those kind of flowers. There are people who really, I know, I read from them that George Jackson, jail, these people die in jail. They are political prisoners. They go and they really commit their life to that. They're really thinking about guerrilla warfare. They're really trying to come up with strategy. They're really trying to figure out how they could arm a community and do all these things. That's not me. That's not me. And that's likely not fucking you if you're talking to me about it. So unless you're getting ready to do some revolutionary shit, but you shut the fuck up and maybe let's figure out some other stuff in between and maybe a more gradual process that works for you, right? Because it'll be people like that who don't want to have conversations about how you get to a road to abolition or something like that, but they just want to say revolution and they want to say abolition now. Well, you have to either two things. Either you're the person that is prepared to go get up and be the spontaneous person and go do the revolution and go put your life on the back, or you need to go be a part of some kind of communal effort to work us towards that. It's got to be two. But the other, just the litmus talking, this the purity test of, we need a big thing. Yeah, okay. Are you doing? Yeah. We need a lot of big shit to happen. People are still waiting on Jesus to come back. That's a real thing. You any other ideas? Any other ideas, my guy?
Yeah.
So no.
And to add some hope, I mean, we talked about Brazil and Bolsonaro. Lula ended up winning, right? So there is not to say that everything's perfect now in Brazil, but there's always the potential for things to turn around. And yes, gradual turnaround. Yes, it's politics. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, there's issues, but there is, just because shit is terrible now and the direction things are going, it looks like it's going to keep getting worse. There's always the potential for something surprising to happen, where there is a shift that we didn't see coming, and oftentimes big changes we don't see coming, and they could be bad, they could be good. So the history isn't written in stone. Things can definitely change, but it does take a different sort of, in the U.S., it takes a different sort of a Democratic Party to do it, because the current one with the current leadership they're not capable of any of the change necessary. But you have, a leader come out of nowhere, replace that and change things from the top down. Things can happen.